Hey there, it's Angela, and I'm so glad you found your way here to architecting. Creative careers can be stressful, and it's hard to be vulnerable, but this is your landing pad for raw honesty. I'll help you get clarity, reconnect with your passion, and have the career of your dreams. If you're ready to make a difference, have an impact, and say bye-bye to burnout, stick with me, and let's get architecting.
Hey, Bright Lights, it is so good to have you back with me for this episode of the Architecting Podcast. You know that I love hearing from you about specific issues that you are encountering in your career, in your quest to make a difference through your work. You know, creative professions, especially architecture, are very challenging, because creativity, by its very definition, doesn't have a right answer. There's no formula for creativity. In fact, if you know it will work, it isn't going to be creative because it means you've done it before. It isn't a new or fresh idea. As a result, we can start to doubt ourselves. We can doubt ourselves as an individual, but we can also doubt ourselves in our profession, through our firm, through even the dynamics of the AEC industry. And that is why I love this question that came in from Bob. Right now, I want to make sure that I win projects. I'm tempted to lower fees. Competition is tougher than ever. Owners are trying to drive down prices. In a CM model, contractors are becoming more and more adversarial. I feel like it is a struggle every day just to keep going. And on top of it, I don't feel that the value I bring is really being seen that way. I'm becoming a commodity. Help. I feel you, Bob. And I think most of our listeners in this audience can relate. It's easy to be idealistic when times are good. It's easy to say, I have these goals or these aspirations or this area of expertise or this way that I want to structure my process and how I want projects to work. That can go out the window really quickly the minute that we feel any kind of threat, which is kind of normal, as human beings. The survival instinct is pretty hardwired into us. Things that we perceive as a threat, i.e., not being able to get and keep work, not being able to have cash flow coming in, those are real concerns. Those are big deals. And so it is very easy when we are in challenging times to do a lot of catastrophizing, to immediately assume the worst possible outcome, try to play it safe as much as we can, to kick into high gear on the people pleasing because we want to keep everybody happy. Well, I know you have heard me say this before. It's the reason I open every show calling you in this audience bright lights. The brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. And that's because the bright light is a beacon. And a beacon is going to attract people to it. But there also are going to be people who see the beacon clearly and say, I don't want that. You are going to attract and repel. The stronger you show up, the clearer your message is. I always say it's a good thing. Every time I look at my email list of subscribers and I see somebody has unsubscribed, I say, bless and release. Goodbye. Clearly, that person was not getting value from my message, and why would I want them in my audience if that's the case? Don't have to make them wrong or judge them. We all know the famous Abraham Lincoln quote about pleasing all of the people all of the time. It ain't gonna happen. When we make ourselves plain vanilla, when we try to be all things to all people, it's exhausting. Our message gets muddled. It is confusing. It also is very disheartening for staff. If you are a firm owner or you are a leader and you've got people working under you, your staff is there because they resonate with the message, with the why of what you are doing. And when they see that just get compromised, it's very disheartening. So now you've got a lot of uninspired people. And what we know about creativity, and there is real research behind this, is that creativity comes from a place of abundance in the brain. When the brain feels safe, it can focus on things that are fun, playful, joyful. It can be curious. It can explore possibilities. These are the foundation of creativity. On the other hand, being afraid of something means that we're activating the stress response, and the stress response puts us in survival mode. In survival mode, we don't have any extra resources. We are putting everything just into surviving. Our ability to be creative is not anywhere near what it could be if we weren't in that lack-based thinking. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but this year I have joined the board of the AIA Ohio component. I'm secretary this year and been asked to chair the committee on member engagement. One of the things that we are looking at is pain points. The pain points are what is holding back our industry. I'd love to hear your pain points as well, because I think when we can truly unlock the root cause, we can start to see them for what they really are. So in Bob's case, he is feeling fear, worried about getting work. He has therefore turned the people who have influence on his ability to get work or how those projects flow into adversaries. He is believing that there are not enough resources to go around, so he is not in creative mode. He's battening down the hatches. That is a real pain point. Funny thing about pain points is that most of us think that we are safe maintaining the status quo. And no matter how much we might be suffering or unhappy or surviving but not thriving, we will resist change because change doesn't feel safe. And again, we're hardwired for survival, meaning we're always looking for safety. And that is a really paradoxical thing, because in order to evolve, we need to embrace change. We need to grow. We need to have dynamic and new experiences, which means we need to embrace the unpredictability. On my Space Doctor series that you can hear on my YouTube channel, I draw cards related to research on design for well-being, and the neuroplasticity card keeps coming up. It came up in January multiple times. It came up another time and I put it back because I'm like, I can't do 3 in a row on this exact same topic. And it came up both for this week's session as well as the one that I'm doing for the overall month of March predictions. When a card like that comes up, I mean, there's so many cards in this deck. Why does this one card come up all the time? I really believe that we need to hear the message. There's something about neuroplasticity. Here is the brain science of neuroplasticity. It was believed until recently that only young children had the ability for their brain to be malleable, for neural connections to form quickly and to continue to develop neurons. We now know that at any age, your brain can grow new neurons. It can also form new neural pathways. And we also know that when we experience stress or trauma, that neurons die off. The ones that get wired together that create a cause and effect relationship that may or may not be factually correct get activated over and over and over again, and they get stronger and stronger and stronger. So you can think of this as the way that water rolling down a hillside will eventually erode that hillside, will create a river and eventually even a canyon. The stronger that channel is, the harder it is for that channel to get rerouted, but also the harder it is for any surrounding area to collect any water, because it's all going to go into this main channel. The stronger the main channel gets, the more of a collector it's going to get. And it's the same way in your brain. When we get these chains of neurons that are firing together, that are activating habitually the same beliefs and thoughts, it becomes unconscious, but it also becomes very powerful, and the neurons around it don't survive. That connection becomes that much more emphasized because there are fewer other connections there. And that is what I feel like is a root cause of a lot of the pain points that we are experiencing right now in our industry. There are certain beliefs about cause and effect that are commonplace, that everyone buys into, that are very much rooted in fear and lack and competing and perfectionism and overperforming. As a result, it is stunting the ability for us to think differently about how projects work and how projects are delivered. If we could start to harness that and pivot and think differently, we can overcome the challenges of our current situation. And I'll give you another example. This comes from the world of brand building and marketing and business models. So there's this concept of the growth share matrix that originated at BGC. It's been around since 1970. This growth share matrix is used by pretty much all of the Fortune 500 companies and is a central business strategy. It says there's 4 quadrants, and that what we're looking at is on the y-axis, growth from low to high and market share from high to low. The quadrants are high growth, high market share, the stars; high growth, low market share, the question marks; low growth, low market share is the pet, meaning the thing that people are just dumping money into because it's a passion project; and the low growth but high market share cash cows. The thing is that cash cows are not going to be cash cows forever. There are always disruptors entering into every single industry. Cash cows establish the status quo and the expectations. And even though people may have pain points around them, this becomes the go-to, the standard. And what disruptors do is they look at those pain points and they come up with a whole different paradigm. They think outside of the status quo. If you cannot pivot your business, you're going to lose ultimately, because these disruptors are going to reshape your market. And in the AEC industry, we are in a time of great disruption. We all know about economic upheaval, what it has done to supply chains, to labor shortages, what has happened related to uncertainty, whether it's tariffs coming in, other inflationary pressures, costs have gone up. We simply get less for construction dollars today. If you and your clients and your contractors and your consultants and everybody involved in the project is still trying to use these old models, you're going to be hitting the wall about what you can build, and you're going to be making a lot of assumptions about what is safe to build, what is safe to put in a program, nobody's going to want to take a risk. But the thing about pain points and disruptors and pivoting in a changing industry is that eventually you are in a complete earthquake, right? The disruptors have created shaky ground where there was once stability. And on that shaky ground, it is no longer so safe or so attractive to keep conducting business as usual. For the first time, for most people, taking a risk and embracing change becomes less scary and more safe feeling than staying put where you are. I was invited by Healthcare Design Magazine to weigh in on 2025 trends, and I talk specifically about that. So I will put the link to that article in the show notes if you want to check that out. You need to embrace technology trends, including AI, not be afraid of it, but put it to work for you. You need to really invest in your human capital because staff are your single biggest resource. You need to think about how you can leverage resources. So can you hire fractional staff if needed to cover things like accounting or HR? And you need to think about financial performance. As you can imagine, these things go hand in hand. If we are embracing technology trends, it means we're also having to have the right people working for us that can work with the technology. Because one thing I will tell you for free about technology is always a garbage in, garbage out scenario. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to query or how to iterate using technology, it is not your friend. So you need to think differently. You need to be smarter. And when you do that, you can get a much higher productivity rate. You can divert your staff from the menial tasks that nobody's so excited about doing and have them focusing on more meaningful work. I've been saying this for years and years and years. Our industry needs to shift to an evidence-based design model. A lot of people just think that means, oh yeah, that's because natural light is really helpful in any place of work or business. So yeah, show that research. And that's all true. But what evidence-based design really lets you do is show how design impacts the performance of the space that you are designing. And performance can be energy usage. It can also be things like recruitment and retention, lawsuits, operations costs, all kinds of things that any organization you're working with already has on their overall balance sheet for their annual budget. And when we can start to link design decisions to cost saving in areas of the balance sheet, now a design decision is an investment. So it isn't about the first cost of what does it take to build this. It is about the year-over-year investment that is creating savings within the organization and maybe even generating revenue. And it doesn't have to be extreme. When we look at construction budget versus an annual operations budget, it's shocking how this construction budget that in our world is such a big deal. It is the number that is ruling everything we do, is utterly dwarfed by an operations budget. When we could show that we could make improvements to that operations budget by even 2%, right? It doesn't have to be some big, crazy number. This project pays for itself very quickly. And not only does the project pay for itself, but that individual design decision that might feel like scope that is low-hanging fruit to cut when we have budget concerns, if it is going to truly have the right return on investment, suddenly looks a lot different. To do this is a little bit more challenging than simply having somebody throw a cost estimate to a design. It requires you doing your homework. It requires you structuring your firm differently to, one, get a much better understanding of your client's pain points and the users of the space pain points. In many projects, the client and the user group are not the same. Understanding both points of view, that voice of the process, that voice of the customer, those concepts from lean design, will tell you where the pain points are. Once you understand the pain points, you understand what is impacting their business model, their mission, their critical paths. And now we can reframe what we are solving for in design. And I say this because it might not be exactly how your client defined the project. And it also means we have to approach design a lot differently. We have to do more simulations. We have to do more scenario building, more prototyping, more early testing, so that we can not only get our clients more comfortable with going in a new direction, but also to understand what's going to work and what isn't. Just to give you an example, this comes from the world of human factors from a paper that some colleagues and I wrote in collaboration with human factors researchers. For every dollar invested in a detailed mock-up, $16.66 can be saved in the long. Investing in design pays dividends. There's research behind that, but it requires a different process, and that is a mock-up-centric or a simulation-centric process to know how to strategically invest the dollars you have on a project. Being really innovative and having this big vision and then having it fizzle out, that isn't going to help us. So we need to know that they're actually going to commit to a different operational model or a different management model. We need to know that they're going to commit to training the people that use the building, helping them work better, work differently. We need to pull in industries like human factors, which is all about how people operate in space, how they make critical decisions, how they form habits. We need to think about things like change management. And these are not things that architects typically know about or think about, and certainly not things that we are typically talking about. However, in this time of great change, we can either all hunker down and play in the red ocean where everything just keeps getting drifted down to the lowest common denominator, and we can all feel hurt and disillusioned and unappreciated, fighting for that last dollar while we stab our colleagues in the back to get it. Or we can be innovators, where there is infinite possibility, the blue ocean strategy. We can embrace change. We can be part of the disruptor that reshapes the industry. Bob, I hope that helps you think a little bit differently about the pain points you are experiencing and some strategies that you can use today with your clients, with your contractors, with your consultants to try to have a different kind of conversation. And it's going to feel a little weird at first because, again, these are not things that any of these parties are used to thinking about, right? We live in the on time, on budget world. This is expanding that viewpoint. This is making different priorities from an organizational perspective, not only through the project's perspective. I also think that we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep showing how it works and what it can do. I hope you will join me in helping to reframe the work that we're doing, helping to get out of the very limited container of on time, on budget, only about this project, thinking that has handcuffed us to models that are crumbling in the face of industry disruption and change. I would also love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what your pain points are. You can email me at Angela@Architecting Podcast. You can also DM me through the Architecting channel on YouTube, on LinkedIn on the Architecting page, or at Architecting Podcast on Instagram. Don't forget to like, rate, and review this episode wherever you are listening to podcasts. Thank you so much, and I hope I was able to inspire you today. Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you want even more content, head on over to architectingpodcast.com and subscribe to my newsletter and get some great free downloads while you're there. Be sure to follow me on social media. On Instagram at Architecting Podcast, Facebook and LinkedIn pages are Architecting, and the YouTube channel Architecting Podcast. Stay inspired.